thank you for those who are returning. Appreciate you guys returning to these sessions. This is the third PowerApps workshop now we've done, and we are intending on doing one of these every month for the next 12 months. So yeah, trying to just incrementally share a bit of knowledge on the Power Platform, because we're so excited about it, and feel like it could deliver a lot of value to organizations across the UK and the world. So I think if you haven't seen workshop 1 and 2, I do encourage you to go back onto YouTube and just watch those workshops, because I think in order to get the gist and really kind of understand what we're doing at this stage, it helps to have the background and the context of workshop 1 and 2 as well. But as always, if you've got any kind of feedback, any direct questions, happy to answer them here today, or even just email us at info@icotechservices.co.uk, and we'll get back to you with any kind of answers or support we can offer you on this technology. So with that said, then let's just jump straight into it. So agenda. So I'm going to do the introductions, approach, and offerings as always. Although I recognise if you've come to one of these sessions before, you probably switch off because it's a bit boring to hear it time and time again. I've got to find a better way of doing that, because it's challenging to deliver it time and time again. But sometimes the people come onto these sessions for the first time, so it's nice just to give a bit of a backdrop and intro of Icotech and who I am and what we do. I will do a bit of a summary of the previous workshops, very high level, literally 1 or 2 slides, just to cover off the context really of the previous ones. And then this workshop is all about business rules. There's some cool features that we like to use when we're delivering these apps, which are business rules and business process flows that really differentiate this technology from SharePoint. So I'll take you into a bit more detail on how those work, and I'll do a bit of a live demonstration. Touch wood, it goes well and doesn't go horribly wrong, and I can show you how to set up those business rules and business processes in a simplistic way, so you can go and try it yourself. That's the idea. So with that said, then let's jump straight into it. So yeah, just a bit about us if you don't know. So my background is project program management and consultancy in kind of projects, and I was a head of projects and governance for Babcock International Group, and then Companies House as well. Just Icotech as in a nutshell, we predominantly specialize in public sector here in the UK, and we've got clients like ACAS, IPO, ONS, and Bays as well, and a few others that are not listed on here. That we will change this slide next time. I'll make a commitment to change the slide next time with some different customers that we work with across the UK. But yeah, our approach, and hopefully like my new slides as well. Thanks, Lauren, for putting those the new slides, the new format together for us. But yeah, this is the new slide deck. But our approach basically is delivering value at pace. So whether it's sharing our knowledge through webinars, through blogs, whatever it needs to be, we like to share and collaborate with industry experts to make sure we're delivering value for our customers as much as possible, of course. Our offerings, so solutions basically is what this is. It's 365. Anything in 365, any ideas hub, a capture tool, a hot desk booking app we've been doing recently. We've even been doing a CRM for an automotive company as well. So so we've done lots of different solutions in the Microsoft technology stack. We've got a number of products on the app market space as well, which are SaaS products. I do a lot of consulting and business transformation services as well, and then we've got support services. So once we've built these products and these solutions for our customers, often they need us to help and support these products after they're in a BAU environment. So just a quick request: if everybody can put themselves on mute, that would be much appreciated. If you do have a question, come off mute and just ask me that question. But if you could, that would be great. So our specialties are really in the Project Online, the PowerApps, Power BI, and Dynamics 365. That's what our competencies are across our development team. And obviously they go through accreditations and exams in order to achieve those competencies. But of course, in these solutions that we deliver, we have to have skills in Teams, in SharePoint, in Exchange Online, Power Automate, etc. But today's session is predominantly around PowerApps, and that's what these workshops are really looking to do, is to share how we can use PowerApps and build PowerApps for our businesses that we work for. That's the idea. So just a quick summary of the different types of apps, and I just want to hone in on the fact that, today and in all of the previous workshops, we've been talking specifically about model-driven apps. And model-driven apps are a systematic view of records and going through different kind of statuses and life cycles. Portals are more about websites and interfacing with your external customers, and we will transition into portals in the future and what they do and how they can be used. But often, our customers start with model-driven apps and expand then into portals and then expand into Canvas apps as well. Not many of our customers start with a Canvas app or a portal because it's normally the model-driven app is almost the back end, if you would, in that old sense, and the portal and the Canvas are more like the front end, talking to our external customers. That's how they tend to develop. So there are other types of applications in the PowerApps platform. It's just that we predominantly work on the model-driven apps because of the types of projects that we're doing with our customers. So I just wanted to reiterate that really. Today we're going to talk about the business rules, and this is something that's really important to us, and there's some cool features that we use that elevate a model-driven Power App from SharePoint. And this is a condition you can put in place, or a multiple condition you can put in place to show, for example, what fields are mandatory or what fields can appear based on the selection of a value in a system. So, one of our most recent customers was showing us a SharePoint site that they use now, and the SharePoint site was horrifically long. The form, they were scrolling down for 3 or 4 what felt like A4 pages with hundreds of fields visible, and there was no logic behind it. There's no kind of, if you click yes here, then these fields appear, or if you don't click yes, and if it's any of these results, then these fields will disappear. And I think that's really the benefit of the Power Platform and Power Apps specifically, is that we can create these business rules and we can choose what kind of fields or content to surface to the user based on their user journey going through the system. So we're excited by this, and I think it's a good next step from what we've talked about in the previous workshop. So I'll show you this today. We'll keep it very simple. We'll take it on from where we were in part 2, but it's something you could apply to the logic you could apply to your own Power Apps and take it on a level. The next thing I wanted to show you today and go through was the business processes. So this, you can see here, this record has 4 stages: so setup, track, select, and close. And we can constrict or build these processes to however we want, really. And I just wanted to show you this because, again, SharePoint doesn't really have this level of taking a record through a multiple stage approach. You can set statuses like a status or a drop down saying stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, but you can't dictate what needs to happen in stage 2 in order to get to stage 3. And that's a unique difference really for SharePoint and Power Platform, and where this technology differentiates from the existing technology that most of our customers are using currently. So that's what I just want to take us through today. Just do a bit of a demo on how it works and do a bit of a show and tell on how to set it up in the most simplistic of approaches. I'll take a stopgap then just before I jump into the demo. Is there any questions on any of that? No. Okay, cool. Just for awareness, this is being recorded, so if you want to refer back to this at a later date, it will be on YouTube in the next couple of days, and Lauren will share this video out with you as well. So let's get into it then. So the demo. So just going to recap on where we were in part 2. So this is the make.powerapps portal effectively. So if anybody's got 365 and using it, you can hit make.powerapps.com in your browser and you'll be landed on this page. These are some of the predefined apps that come out of the box. And you can use those in a light touch approach, I would say. But IcoRisk is the one app that we created a number of months ago, and we're using through this demo process really. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the system quickly and just go to some of the other things we did previously, which were setting up kind of related fields and setting up the fields and the views and adding the fields to these pages as well. So last time we were selecting kind of or bringing through fields into forms. So I just, if you want to know how to go and add a field into a form in a section, then go and have a look at part 2, because that shows you how to do that. And yeah, so you can go ahead, and the idea of today is really to show you how these fields can be appear or disappear based on a selection of a field. And what I did is earlier on this morning, I took a test issue here, and I just to animate this and just to show you in practice before we go and build it into the risk list, is that you see this further information field here. It should disappear when I select a value here. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying that there's a business rule in the back end of this service that's saying, if this risk is of an early warning type or a customer type, I don't require any further information. However, if this risk is a compensation event, then I do need to have further information appear. All right, so I need to add some narrative in here now to say that, issue is live, So the idea is that you can take that rule and apply it to lots of different fields and sections, and obviously you can imagine when you aggregate that up, your form could be 5 or 6 fields long based on a few answers in that form. Now that becomes 20 fields long, and it's to stop the users having mass number of fields available in one form. And we all hate filling out these digital forms with lots of fields that we don't understand what they're there for, we don't understand what they mean, and it's just a really ugly kind of and painful thing to do. So just one more time, I just want to show you that bringing that off and changing the issue type to an early warning type, that field now removes. Right, and we can apply some other controls in there as well, like is it mandatory, is it optional, is it not required? So based on a condition, we can say, look, that field is now required as a result of this being selected. So I might try that if I get time, or I feel confident enough to do it live on a demo. But if compensation is selected, then we might be able to say the claim status is mandatory now and not not optional in the case it is currently. All right. So in order to do this, then what we need to do is we need to go into the actual solution, and we need to go and find the app that we've built. And this is, again, if you're not kind of familiar with this, then go and have a look at part 2 and part 1, because it kind of shows you the content and the concepts of this service. So what we would do is go into the issues list that we were taught on earlier on. I'm just going to double check where it is. ICO issues, here we go. And you get a set of business rules and are available to you. One thing I would say is that this is notoriously slow as a feature when you come in to select these, in my experience. So if you do get like a hanging for like more than say 30 seconds, I would suggest just closing it and going back into here and opening it. You'll notice that kind of appear within 15 to 20 seconds there. This morning, for example, it took me 2 or 3 times to get into that little folder. All right, so just going to show you here the condition that we've built, or the rule that we've built here. So we've got a condition that says this is a field appearing condition. I've just titled that there, the display name, and I've said basically if the issue type equals a compensation event, right, then what happens? If yes, you'll notice here there's a tick box and there's an X. It's almost like the happy path and the unhappy path. If yes, do this. If no, do that. And that's just, it took me a while to find it actually when I was first building these, because it's not abundantly obvious that that's the happy path and that's the unhappy path. But effectively it's saying here, if the issue is, if that criteria, that condition is met, then the further information field is visible. Yes, and you can see that here. All right. If not, else, I guess, else, you can see you've written down here for you, just if you're into your Excel queries. If else, then the further information field is not visible. All right, and that's how it works. But what we'll do now is we'll try and go to the risk list, for example, and we'll just build it for you on the fly so you can see it in practice. Just for information, the reason I can't change this is because this is active. If I wanted to go and change this criteria or add more criteria to this business rule, I'd have to deactivate the rule first, then go and make my changes, and then reactivate it. Okay, So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back. I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm not making any more changes. I'm going to go to the risk list just to make sure. I'm in the right place, and then we're just going to try and find. I haven't pre-planned anything. I'm just going to try and find a field that I think would be useful to appear on the form of a risk list, if to demonstrate that basically. So what we're going to do is we're going to go for, what field should we go for? I'm going to say risk trend, or demo example. One of these fields I want to not appear based on this risk being a anything else other than a technology risk. So if the user selects as a financial risk and saves the record, then that demo example shouldn't appear as a field. If it's a technology risk and I save it, then that demo example then needs to appear. That's my kind of requirement, I think. I'll use in this example. Touch wood, it works. So risks here. So we go into add a business rule. All right, and here's our condition. It always starts off with one condition. All right, so what I'm going to say is the entity equals, so the field, that's why it's nice to have almost the front end of the app open and the back end of the settings open at the same time, so you can kind of cross-reference the two. I can go back and forth basically. So I'm just reminding myself what the field was called, and it's the risk type. So the field, which is risk type, and there you can see those pre-populated values appear at the bottom right. It is always good to try and use a field with choices. Like, try not to use a field that's free text that might have, spelling mistakes or spaces. You can do it, but it gets incredibly difficult. So always try and do this type of business rule based on a field that has got predefined values using choices. Again, if you don't know what that is, go back to part 2 and part 1, because I do explain how choices work in those parts. So if the technology risk is selected, then that is the requirement, basically the condition that we're going to apply here. All right. What you need to do is not abundantly clear, but you need to go into components, and then you'll see the action. So you've got a condition, which is in purple there on the left hand side over here. That's the condition. Then if happy, yes. If met, then there's an action. If not, what do we do? Yeah. So this is all about set field visibility. So I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to say appear yes. If the condition is met, then I want to set the visibility. Right. And you can see all the fields are all available here. A drop down demo example. There we go. So I'll go back just to make sure we're following along here. But imagine that said like technology, like mitigation, or technology description, or maybe something more like what technology is this risk going to impact, that type of thing. Something that kind of relates it back to this value here is the point. Would be a real requirement from a customer. I want to, for all technology risks, I want to know what technologies is at risk, or maybe end of life, or whatever it may be, and therefore we'd make that appear. But for every other risk, we don't really need to care. If for that would capture that information. So demo risk example is yes, and I would always kind of just change the display name of the condition. So tech risk type equals yes. Something along those lines is yes. Just to if somebody else comes into the system and tries to change it, at least they kind of know what you are trying to do in this space. You do need to put a no condition in there as well. So you would just hover over it, drag that across, and then here we go back to demo consequence is no, it's not visible. I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah. So tech risk type is no, and we apply that then. All right. Any questions on the call, by the way? If anybody's got any thoughts or how-tos, or can I do this? I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And please do kind of like a bit of a challenging question for those who've been on calls. I like a good challenge. just to kind of confirm as well, you've got lots of different actions. All right, so you can even do recommendations where you get kind of pop-ups. You can unlock and lock fields as well, so it's read only. We can bring up error messages, so you can say, look, if you've selected this and maybe it's in the past, for example, a due date is in the past, bring up an error message and say, no, you can't put a risk due date that's in the past, for example. You can always pre-populate values as well. So if you've got a field that is, again, best to have it as a lookup. So, technology risk is selected, then maybe set another value as the owner of this risk is the IT director in that example. Or the risk is for a project, therefore the set the value of the risk owner as the project sponsor. That kind of logic can be applied here. This is where you would set the required or not required. So if it is yes, we could add another condition that says actually, this is me biting off more like a chew now, so bear with us. But what did I commit to doing? It was, and I think it was on the issues, but that Saturday demo, then we could change that field to is required. So sat demo is required, and I will admit that was a demo I did on a Saturday, which that's why it's called Saturday demo. So Saturday demo, business required, yes. So I should have done it step by step, really. But the way I operate and the way I build these things is that I do a little bit at a time. So I test my logic first. I probably should have not put that additional kind of action in there. I probably should have just tested it first, did my first set of actions work, yes or no, then gone and added my second level of complexity in there. The next thing we need to do, though, is we need to validate it. So it's almost like the system will check whether your logic and your rules make sense. So it protects you from doing something a little bit stupid. So the fact that it said my validation was successful there on the top left is comforting. It's good. I'm just going to double check because you should really save first, then validate, then activate. It's almost like the way in which the buttons take you through the journey. So it's kind of pushing you to save, validate, then activate. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to activate the process. It does take a bit of time, unfortunately, but yeah. It's just going through that process. So you can see the power of this technology and the kind of rules you can create. We've got lots of customers that have got hundreds and hundreds of rules that are far more complex than a simple demo example. But you could see how you could apply that to 15, 20 fields on a form. You could make a really small form intuitive and follow a business a user journey, really. Cool. Let's just double check it with me that I want to activate it. Again, these types of processes aren't meant to be quick, so it's prioritizing end user performance here rather than me trying to put a new rule into the system. So you can see now, as it's activated, everything is locked. I can't change anything. And if anybody's running the process or changing it on the front end base at this point, it won't even let me deactivate it until somebody saved that record. So it protects all that logic and data, I guess, control, really. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back to my app. I'm going to close this down. I'm just going to go back here and make sure my business rule has saved in the business rules. And again, if you want to know anything about views or forms and the columns, then go back to part 2 and part 1 because we discussed those in those workshops. So that's now been put in place. One thing I would say is that another kind of good thing to do is to publish all customizations upon any change in the solution. So like you might be checking in a document into SharePoint, you're effectively saying all my customizations, push them forward from my solution to my application. And it's like kind of I kind of relate it to back end, front end, although it's not technically that. Is Microsoft would pick me up on that terminology, but for me it's like I'm making my changes in the system settings, and I'm pushing them forward now to the end user community who are using the front end application to access that. One of the downsides is it does take a bit of time, as you can see, because it's effectively publishing all those changes and all those entities or items of the solution, components of the solution in one. So it does take a bit of time to do. But yeah, hopefully this is making sense. Well, I've just realized something. This shouldn't make a difference. It does take a bit of time. What I'll do at the same time is I'll go and see if because it may well have published those changes into by me saving them anyway. So I just want to check something. Am I an architect? Yes, cool. What I was doing there is just the environment, making sure I was in the right environment. Within Microsoft 365 tenant, you've got multiple environments. You've got default, you've got a sandbox environment that we set up. So I just wanted to make sure I was in the right space before publishing those changes, because yeah. So there we go. So there's the ICO risk app. I'm going to go back into the front end now. I'm going to go back to corporate risks. And fingers crossed it will work, although I will caveat that it won't. I'm not going to be, there we go, published successfully. So I'm just going to come out of it just for simplicity, just to make sure I'm not looking at an old version. I'm just going to refresh the page. It's just, if you've got OCD like me, you just want to follow a process and take it through the steps, then yeah, this is the best thing to do, is just come out and refresh it. So back into corporate risks, and here there we go. So you can see something that's changed there, that asterisk, that red asterisk. So basically I'm going to say if it's a financial, it should remove, and I think it should, okay, so I think I did bite off more than I can chew, where I don't think I put the no action in there. So if its risk is not set as technical, I didn't tell it what to do, which is interesting, actually. I'm going to defend myself and say my validation should have picked that up. But I think that's where I did bite off more than I could chew, although the core requirement was to get rid of that field if the risk type was set as anything else other than technology, wasn't it? So set it as technology, save that record now, demo example appears, which is what we wanted. So what I'm going to do now is going to go back into my my workflow. I'm just going to put that unhappy path action in there to say that if it's not technology, then take it off the required field. I do hope this is making sense. So ICO risk, here we go. And again, I think it just shows that it's a live practical demonstration of why you should do a little bit at a time. Don't bite off more than you could chew, or I could chew. Yes. So here you can see, I should have picked it up really. If that condition is met, it's doing these two things. If it's not met, it's just doing that one thing. So I need to deactivate the flow. There you go. And that gives me the ability then to go and change this flow. All right, so I'm just going to remind myself it's a set a business rule. Yes, so I'm going to go to components, a set of business required. I'm going to hover it over here. It's just drag and hover over the plus. All right, I'm then going to go and select the field, Saturday demo, not required. Yeah, so it is interesting how actually my validation didn't pick it up, because I would have expected it to tell me that no, you need to put a non condition in. So if it's no, not met, then it's not required. If it is met, then it is required. You can see that there. So I'm going to go through the process again of saving it, validating it, and then go through this processing. So hopefully this has given you some ideas of how you could use this in your business. And just to be really clear, I'm not as technical as say the delivery team here or the senior devs here, but it's just the point of this technology is meant for people like myself who've got a bit of an understanding, could go and build a SharePoint list with some coaching, with some training. They can go and build some really powerful applications in this technology. That's the idea really. And hence why we're showing you this stuff, so you could take this away. And yeah, it would be great to see some applications in the future that have been built from people who have seen some of these videos. So that business rule has now been activated in the environment. I'm now gonna not publish it because it does take a long time, and I'm pretty sure that because I'm in the solution, it doesn't totally need to be published. Although do forgive me if I have to come back. So going to risks, I'm just going to refresh it just because I just like to refresh, make sure it's all start from scratch. It is a technology risk already, so both of those appear. The test now is if it's financial, then yeah, we go. So you saw two things happen there. The demo field removed itself, and the Saturday demo has now gone to non-mandatory. All right. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that you find that useful. We definitely find that type of control really useful in these things. So test risk is added. It's an active risk. I'm going to make it a financial risk. I'm going to score it likely, major. See, these fields are locked. And again, one of those controls was, or those actions was that you could unlock a field based on the values you select elsewhere. All right, so this is a demo workshop 3 risk. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not required. So I'm not going to put it in there. All right, and I'm going to save that record. Great, just to take you through the journey really. Now, if I change that to a technology risk, right, save that. I need to. I actually didn't even need to save it. It just came up if you saw it changed. So I need to put tech risk. Let's call it SQL on-prem. I would put is dead, but I'm not gonna put that. So SQL service, yeah, whatever it needs to be, is at risk. All right, so that's a really kind of simple way of showing you the quite powerful control that you can put in place there. And I hopefully that's useful. Again, just to remind you, these calls are recorded, so if you want to go to YouTube channel and watch workshop 3 when it comes out in a couple of days time, you'll be able to kind of pause it and step through and hopefully follow the journey. Although yeah, hopefully that's useful. Cool. So that is business rules, and hopefully I've shown you just just how to go and set those rules up. And again, just to reiterate, you can use those rules for a number of different things, such as pre-populated values, locked or unlocked fields, required, unrequired, maybe even recommended as well. So you can really take that logic on now from the simple stuff I've just shown you there to the next stage in the process. Just want to reiterate as well, if there are any questions, please do feel free to put them in the chat window if you want to, or just come off mute and just ask me how this kind of could work. If you have a specific question that I can't answer, then I'll always take it away and come back to you as we have done before. So yeah, the next thing I wanted to show you then was business process. So this is about taking a record through a series of stages. So whether it's a purchase order that it's requested, approved, or completed, or it's an asset that's delivered. So we have lots of assets here in Architect, so we have to track all those assets, and we have an asset that maybe is ordered, it's with us, it's kind of in our environment, or it's being disposed of. So these are types of processes that you could put together. Even if you're a project practitioner, it could be that it's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. It doesn't really matter. So a process is built. It's a bit like Power Automate, really. It's the same kind of underlying technology. Not that. I saw the word P and I thought, well, it's down as process. So it's the wrong one. So this is a business process. All right. So every app, you can create a business process which has a number of stages on this process. So this is the risk identified. This is the risk actioned, mitigated, and closed. Now, you can do a number of different things in here. We could get a bit crazy and put like flows in here. So if you had a really complex Power Automate flow, we could trigger it automatically based on the stage or any condition that's met within these checklists effectively. But for now, I'm going to keep it pretty simple just because of time, but also just to start us off in creating a simple process with some simple fields in here. So effectively what this is saying is it's saying this is the name. This is a step, a data step within this stage. I'm going to go back to the front end of it as well, so we can show you what the front end is doing and then how it looks when you set it up. But effectively, this is identified. So it's saying in order to go from identified to action, do you need to have a name in this field? And it is actually the same field as name there as well. So it's not different. It's just surfacing that field in a checklist and saying, you must fill this out. All right. I actually think that something like original likelihood or original impact is actually more logical here. All right, as a checklist. So I'm going to go in here back to the back end effectively, and I'm actually going to deactivate it because it won't it shouldn't let me change it without deactivating it. All right, so I've deactivated that now. So data step, just going to put this data step in here, drag it in. All right, what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say, okay, so this is the risk score. All right, it's the field that we want to bring in was original something, wasn't it? Oh, I've just realized, I think the reason it wasn't, bear with me 2 seconds. So original likelihood, I think, okay, so my current suspicion is this flow is not the flow that is actually being used by that application, but I'm just going to double check something a minute. So likelihood score, I'm just going to bring it through sequence 2. I'm going to save it, validate it, and publish it. Just sometimes different flows, even though that says a risk process, it might not be the risk process flow that this app is actually consuming, because it might be consumed by something else, which is terribly complicated, I know, and it causes these types of problems. But I just want to double check. So I'm going to make this little change here, and then I'm going to activate it, and I'm going to go back into the app and see if my change has gone through to the front end of the application. Okay, if it has, then we know we're okay. But if it hasn't, then we know that this process in my solution is not actually being used by that front end application. So just have to wait a couple of seconds. Cool, so that's done, it's validated, it's activated. It is waiting for cache. There we go. It should say deactivated there. There we go. That's my confirmation that this flow is active. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back to corporate risks. And again, if this hasn't been added now, then we know that flow is not the flow that's been used. So here we go. It is the flow. Phew, I was worried. So effectively, what we're trying to do now is just fill the form with values that we want. So let's pick something else, because there's some logic in the background that's changing these. So I'm going to pick risk type. All right. So before the risk can be moved to action, I want the risk type to be selected. All right. So I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to deactivate the flow. All right. And then I'm going to go data step. I'm going to drag that in there. I'm going to remove this one because I don't really need it. I just did it as a quick test, just to clarify something. So data step, I'm going to put risk, call it risk type. Right, data field is risk type is required. All right, and sequence is simply the sequence of the steps that it appears in this form. All right, and I'll apply that now. And then we'll be able to see that in order for me to move forward, it is a required field in the view. So before you really save the record, you have to put it in there. But I'll try and pick another example now to show you where you can have a field that's not required in the form, but is required in the step. Yeah, so you can change it. So even though it's not required on say the first entering of the record of the risk, like let's call it description, or we'll take an example now in a minute. In order for you to move into stage 2, it is required. It does need to be filled in. Yeah, so that's a kind of level of control you've got in this technology, which is really cool, and allows for much more complex solutions to be built. So again, as my business rule earlier, it's a save, it's a validate, it's just making sure that it's all set up correctly, and it's an activate. All right, and in real terms, I would always suggest you publish it, but for time, I don't want to keep you guys hanging on just watching me publish countless changes into the app. I'm going to keep hoping it does it for me on every save here. So I'm activating it back into use now. There we go. It's just going to wait for my cache again, and it's going to change the screen now, and it's going to go to deactivate. There we go. Again, this series, I want to make sure everybody's aware that this is the configuration or setup of the system. So it is suitably slow because it's prioritizing end user performance, not me making changes or mucking around with the system. It's prioritizing guys really actively using and changing records and all that kind of stuff. All the processing horsepower is over on the front end. So here's risk type. So the risk type is there now, and basically if I change this to technology, right, and you notice all the changes we made earlier, they all subsequently come through. So it's not a different field, it's the same field, just surfaced in two different places on the list here. All right, so let's pick risk trend as a suitable example here. So risk trend isn't mandatory. All right, so on the first time you submit the risk into the system, it's not a mandatory field to enter into. And it's a bad example actually, because here we go. So it's empty here, right? So let's go back into the system, into here now, and we're going to say that, look, for example, the requirement is on adding the risk to the system, the risk trend doesn't need to be added. We don't want the user to make up the risk trend, because maybe it needs to stay there for a couple of months or a couple of weeks or whatever it is. But actually, before it can be actioned, before we can go to stage 2 of the process, we want the risk trend field to be required. All right, so I'm going to bring this data step in. I'm going to bring it in here, and I'm going to go, was it risk trend? And this is the reason we have them open. Yeah, it was risk trend. I'm going to find the field in this list, risk trend, and I'm going to set it as required. I like it as sequence 3. I like that. The name first, the risk type, then the risk trend. But if you wanted to change it and bump it up to the top, you could select that field goes up to the top in that checklist. I'm going to apply that now. Just wait for it to go through. Save it. Go through this process again. It is a bit laborious, but it's there for a reason, so we can control this thing. We're going to validate it and just yes, and then we're going to activate it as well. Again, just to visualize what this could do for you, you could have a flow that kicks off at this step. So is a yes, no. If you click yes in this box, it could fire a Power Automate flow to go and get an approval from a sponsor or a stakeholder. Once that is approved, then and that field gets changed to yes, it will automatically go to the next stage in the process. So we'll show you that probably in workshop 4, 5, or 6, somewhere in there. But that's where you kind of really start integrating the individual solutions available in the Power Platform, stitching them together to give you a kind of a wider range solution. All right. So I'm now going to go back again, corporate risks. I'm just going to hit refresh just to make sure my cache isn't storing anything. And I'm going to go back into this risk, the first risk added way back when. So risk trend is not mandatory, right? So I'm going to add it blank, but here it is mandatory. So it's saying I cannot go through to the next stage of the process unless I've added risk trend, a value in risk trend. Now that is brilliant for me. I love that. All the kind of conditions. I'm not asking for every field in the system to be populated on day 1 of entering the record. You can imagine if this has got 50 fields in it, I'm not asking the user to make up stuff, because it's quite annoying, isn't it, when you try and save a record and it's saying you've got to fill in this mandatory field. So to have the flexibility to say no, at this stage in the process you do not need to fill in this field, but if you want to go through to the next stage of the process, you have to fill in this field. That is a really great control. So now I'm saying yes, it's stable, and I'm going to go through to the next stage. All right, and sorry, increasing, and there it is there. All right, so whilst that field isn't actually required, in order to move it through to actioned, it has to be required. All right, so I hope I've shown you something useful and valuable there. Even though I had a wobbly at one point thinking the process wasn't the right process, but yes, it's worked out. So just to recap, we've shown you a business rule and how you can control what fields appear and what fields don't appear based on values in the system. And also, how we can take a field from mandatory to non-mandatory based on the value in a different field. And then also how we can simply configure and edit a flow, a business process flow here on the top here, to simply ask the user to fill out certain fields at certain points in the process of the record. So I hope that's been useful. I have been talking for 45 minutes straight now, so I am going to open up the floor to anybody who wants to come off mute and just ask a question. Just if you've got anything that comes to mind, how you could use it, I'd really welcome your questions, and happy to answer any of them that you may have. Thank you, by the way. Any questions at all? Nope. Well, sometimes I take a risk and I call somebody out and I just pick a name and ask them how they would use it in their business. But this time I won't, because it's a nice day outside. I need to head outside and enjoy it and go for a walk. But thank you very much for your time. This is recorded and it will be available on YouTube. Again, if you've got any questions, just email info@architectservices.co.uk, and we'll answer any of the questions that you have. We are on all the social platforms, so Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, a lot, and Twitter as well. So yeah, if you want to follow us or see or keep updated of any of this information or this knowledge, then please do feel free to subscribe and follow us on any of those social platforms. And otherwise, thank you very much for your time. Thank you so much for attending. Yeah, do let us know if you've got any questions going forward. But have a great day, and catch you soon. Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.